Hello, it's me, and today I'll be talking about the three act structure. So, what is the three act structure? So, the three act structure is a model which is used to show the three parts in which a story could be divided into. Act 1 is also known as the setup, Act 2 is the confrontation, Act 3 is the resolution. So, these are what they're known as and why they have reasons for those things being called those things. Like the setup is where before you begin an activity or anything, you should set up first or prepare for what is going to happen next. And the confrontation is like it's going to happen. It is going to happen. No matter how much preparation has been done. Just expect confrontation. And the resolution is the climax, or basically the ending. So it was first described by Aelius Donatus and again by Sid Field in his 1979 book Screenplay, The Foundations of Screenwriting, which I have never read before, obviously. But I remember my teacher mentioning about this to me before. The three act structure is basically this model that I've been talking about and how stories are told from Act 1, which is basically the beginning, and there's inciting thoughts. So let's say character, someone's been killed or something, and then the next day the detective comes and they see this murder that's happened, and they try and figure out who may have done this. So they assume they knew. You can have certain things because some things there's a lot of more information about what's happening during the time and so on and so forth. So Act 1 is basically the beginning of the story. It is used to establish the location, characters, and theme and time. So everything Act 1 is supposed to be the basis of every part. It's the most important bit of the story because you do need to provide as much information as possible about the plot by not telling, but you have to show the story. Showing, if you're telling what's going on, then you might make more. You might give away the story, and what might not be as interesting as showing the story. So it can tell you the theme, like relationships or death or grief or whatever. And will there be suspense? So will there be tension or will there be drama and stuff? And this is where most of the plot happens, as I just said, because most of the plot is mainly happens in the beginning of the story, which I do agree with. And I see many stories start from the beginning, and most of the drama happens in the beginning. Let's say if you're watching a Netflix series or Amazon Prime series, you do need to know what's happening in the beginning, otherwise you will never understand what is going on. So that's why they always tell you to start from the beginning when you watch a TV series or film or something. You should watch from beginning to end without ever stopping, unless you need a break or something. So Act 2 is the middle of the story. So the action tends to build up, which normally happens in Act 2. And this is where the protagonist attempts to resolve the problem. So they try to investigate the issue and see if they can mitigate that problem. So they assume they've solved the problem, but they tend to get into hot water, which normally happens in movies and TVs and that. series and that, so they tend to get in hot water. And in books as well, if you're an avid book reader. So they tend to worsen the situation. So the situation is much more serious than they think it is. So the reason they cannot solve the problem is they tend to not figure out the antagonist's plan. An antagonist is like a nemesis or an arch rival or something, like a villain in the story. As most, in case you don't know what it is, but most of you assume you know what that means. So they will need to learn new skills so they can tackle the problem they are going through. So this is a stage in character development. So you need to be able to develop your characters as much as you can, because so you know what their goals are and know what they're aiming for. You know what they're like if they behave a certain way or if they look a certain way, then you should include it. But I'll primarily say is in the beginning of the story that most information about the character should be at the beginning, not during the middle of the story, which the middle of the story should be only character development, because you need to understand if this character is going to develop into a good person or a bad person or something like that. So this is the last part of the story, which is called Act 3, of course. And this is where the situation would have to be resolved once and for all. So there's no way. That's how you normally end a story. You need to learn how to end a story in a way that you should make sure you end the story well. You know, the climax is always the important bit as well. It depends how you end the story. So questions tend to be answered, giving the character a new sense of who they are. So sometimes the ending is not always a happy one, which it seems some stories are always like that. Like, I've seen many films that are very depressing and very tear-jerking, but that's how things go, really. Because not always, doesn't always need to be smiley, like Disney films that I always see. I'm a huge fan of Disney. I might make a separate video about it. But I have covered Disney once in the media organizations video, if I can remember the title of it. And they do, some endings do tend to be cliffhangers, which kind of does raise questions of what's really happening and what is that TBC type thing, like to be continued or to be announced or something. And this is basically like the old Hollywood way of telling stories. Like, this is basically known as like a linear narrative. So this is basically the basic beginning and middle and end type thing if you're learning about this. So hope you enjoy watching this video. Thank you for watching. Bye.